So much fabric, so little time. We are in the studio today and I'm super excited. Well, it's actually going to be a kind of a compilation over a couple days because I'm working on a bit of a bigger project here. But I thought I would take you along for the ride and do a little bit of a show and tell. Since we finally have a studio space set up, I've been super productive. So today we are working on pinning our placemats. Now, basically, if anybody's gone to our Etsy shop, one of my main things that we do and sell on there is quilted placemats. I love quilting. I've quilted since I was 9 years old. So it's definitely a passion. And I'm just going to kind of show you a little bit here and there, step by step, of some of the placemats that I'm making and the colors I'm working on. And yeah, maybe we'll do something a little bit more in depth at a later date. But I just thought we'll show you the process as we work around the studio. So basically, when it comes to making my placemats, they are essentially kind of what I call farmhouse. They're just very simple patchwork of squares. So everything, basically, first step is cutting out hundreds upon hundreds of different colored squares and sorting them into, I guess you would say, color categories. So here I've got my pile of greens as my example. And I take those and then I organize them into each set or each placemat to then be sewn together. So those are kind of steps that I work on as and when. Basically, if I have a few seconds, I get out a piece of material and cut a whole bunch of squares. I'm lucky enough to have a fabric go cutter, which is a little template that runs through, so I can cut a whole bunch all at one time and it works out fantastic. But between that and organizing them into the placemats themselves, I can do that kind of anytime and just sort of accumulate. And once I have a stack here of a whole bunch of placemats ready to be sewn, that's when we get busy. And at this moment in particular, I've actually organized 5 different colors into stacks. So I'm trying to actually produce all 5 different colored placemats all at the same time. So we're going to continue on here with our pinning, getting these all ready to be sewn, and then we'll bring you back when we're ready for our next step. So now that we have everything all sewn together, we are ironing out our seams. Now, because I do everything by machine quilting on these placemats, I split my seams, as you just saw there. I'll demonstrate kind of one more here, and then I'll tell you about my little fancy tool that I have underneath. But definitely want to make sure you press it as good as you can either way. It just makes it run through the sewing machine so much easier. And one thing that we're looking for, if we can get Chris to kind of zoom in here, is that perfect join. That's the kind of the goal when we make these placemats, when I make these placemats, I guess I should say, is to get the perfect join on there. So there's our front. We just give it a little iron out. And it is ready for some binding and backing. But this is such a simple tool. I got this from a friend of mine. Oh my, it must be at least 10 years ago now. And it has a place of honor so that I never lose it. But you could make one yourself. All it is a piece of doweling cut in half and kind of rounded on the edges so you don't have the pointy form. This one's 16 inches long. But it works so great ironing out your seams and getting them super flat. You can see there, it is so nice and flat, because when you lay it over top of that and kind of press down, the fabric drapes and you get this, like, the stitching is kind of pulled a little bit and it just irons beautifully. I could not be without this for my seams on my quilt tops. We have an array here of placemats that I've got ready to go. The tops, we've got some tan ones, some blue with the red, some burgundy and greens and browns. So I've got out my bolts of fabric here that are my backing and binding. And unfortunately, I'm a little bit running low on batting, so we'll see how far that goes before I have to make a trip to the fabric store. Yay! I need to go get batting, so therefore, you know, we'll come home with fabric. But anyways, we're going to get the backings cut, bindings cut, and kind of get them put together, and then we'll bring you back, kind of show you the finished product. But it's a busy week in the studio, and I'm so glad to have this space set up now that I can just kind of go. But one thing I'm going to show you is where I have a little bit of distraction. So as I stand at the ironing table, I'm confronted with this. All this fabric. and my mind just starts wandering to the next projects. So, a question to you, my viewers. What colors do you think I should combine for my next set of placemats? I want to try and do something different because I always work in very similar colors. So if I move in here, you can see here we've got an array of browns and blue fabrics, darks, lights. We've got burgundies. We've got reds with, it doesn't show it super great, but these are actually like a, it's an orangey yellow, like a ochre kind of color. Ochre. Or is it ochre? What do they call that color? Anyways, they're like a yellowy orange. And I'm an art school major. Go figure. Then we've got greens with some purples in there. Tons of oddity little scraps. If I pull this out just enough, you can see down there we have all of our blacks and whites and grays. And then we have this one, which is just crazy. I've managed to collect up, they're kind of what I would call like retro fabrics, you know, where the big flowers, they look kind of 70s-ish. Some of them even maybe a bit more old-fashioned than that. Lots of paisley prints. I love prints. This is a terrible addiction for me, as I just talked about going to the fabric store. Here I've been collecting up these old prints that are like old flowers and stuff like that, because I would like to do some old fashioned looking quilts at some point as well. But you can definitely see the dilemma that I have. Distraction from the project at hand. So let me know in the comments below what you think would be a kind of a neat color combination to see, because I'm always up for new ideas and trying something new. But I'm going to stick probably at this point still with my squares, because that's kind of my textbook thing on Etsy for selling. But sometimes it's fun to play around with some different colors. So I love to hear other people's ideas. Well, what started out as a plan for 1 week in the studio video has surpassed more than a 1 month in the studio video. But we have made progress, and some things have gotten done, but really it has come down to the fact that there's just not enough time in the day, and that's how it's going to be. So I'm going to show you just how far we did get at least. So I'm still set up to work. It's really, really nice having this space that I don't have to pack everything away. I have one set of placemats left that I still have to quilt. I've got my my thread out. I'm going to work on these possibly today and see if I can get them finished. And then I have 2 sets that I did get quilted. As you can see here, very simple. I use machine quilting and just the double lines. But my browns and another set of blues just need to be bound, which I have the binding. I just have to get going on that. And we got a green, burgundy, and a blue set all finished up. And I also got the scarf mitt set finally finished. I just have to take it off the little loom thing and put on the tassels on the end of the scarf, so super pleased about that as well. All in all, progress is slow. Lots of interruptions, but that's life. So I'm pleased with how well I am getting on with some of the stuff here, and I hope to keep moving forward on getting more and more done. The summer is often a slower time in the studio, but hopefully I'll bring you back on some tours here and there, and we'll see some more stuff being made.